The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler and Jim Kaiju Baker. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
All right. You're on a deadline, so we need to get going.
Yeah, we need to get going.
All right, let's go.
So we are entering Oscar season.
Oscar? Who's
TMI.
Oscar?
This could be considered an Oscar episode. I think we should get our tuxes.
Although I will say, after listening to the Alien episode, that may have been the most epic breakdown of a movie we've done.
Christina's looking pretty swanky. I'm looking pretty tight myself.
Yeah.
Jeff, you gotta step up, Jeff.
I
Come
do.
on.
Listen. I got a T-shirt with the cummerbund already printed on it. So.
Now let's just stop right now.
Rewind.
Before we go any further, we've got a huge announcement to make. Christina Henry, who is here with us today, has agreed, maybe as a charitable decision, I don't know.
Out of sympathy? She's like, you guys need more female voices.
She is now a fully paid up member of the TMI podcast.
Wow. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm like,
Awesome.
I am the parasite in your house.
Oh,
I won't leave.
That's not true. You're a very welcome parasite.
That gives us so much to chew on for next week's episode.
Exactly. Parasite.
But yeah, so as her schedule allows, of course, she is a famous author. And we are very happy to have her.
Famous.
But she can't join us every week because she has prior commitments. So, but as much as she can, she will be on the show with us, and we are very happy to report that.
You know,
Thank
it'd be
you
really
so much,
cool
guys.
if we redid the opening. Do you remember in Batman, whenever Batgirl would show up, you would only know it at the end credit because her Batmobile or her little motorcycle,
animation.
her motorcycle came through, and you were, as a kid, you were like, she's going to be in this episode. We should do something very similar to that.
Yeah, you have to
So
play
we know.
the Who's That Girl clip.
There you go.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. And that way all the listeners would know, Christina's on. Maybe I'll listen this week. Not those other two idiots.
So that's our big news.
That is big news. That's awesome.
Our features this week have a bit of a pedigree. We are covering 1917, nominated for Best Picture, and it won Best Picture at the Golden Globes, actually.
Damn. Yes, it did.
And as a co-feature, we are covering Pan's Labyrinth, also quite the winner of awards in its own right back in 2006 when it was released.
I feel that now that Christina's on board that we're like stepping up our game with some of these movies because this is a far cry from Laser Blast.
Are you? Hey,
Which
we've
we will
agreed
cover.
to cover Laser
We
Blast
did.
and Ice Pirates, I might add.
That is true. That is
Christina is not immune to this.
true. No. And there will be dad jokes. I'm sorry to say. Contrary to what the contract
Is there such a
says.
thing as mom jokes?
I don't know. Mom doesn't
No.
joke
Are
around.
moms,
Moms don't
are
joke.
moms excluded from the dad joke club?
I
Yeah,
guess so.
moms roll their eyes at the dad.
Yes, moms roll their eyes. That is, and now that we can see you roll your eyes too, you'd be like, "I get enough of that at home. I don't need it on the set." Really, even my kids are like, "Really, Dad?" And then I hear my daughter; she's master of the dad joke. So
Yeah.
I have passed it on. Anyways, all right. So should we get into this? Should we do?
Let's
news?
get into news.
So let's do
We
news.
must have some news this week.
We do
right?
have some news, and I feel like every week we just talk about either Star Wars, Marvel, or Disney.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we're going to do. You think that these are the only people who are actually generating news. Disney Plus, first casualty. Hawkeye's been suspended indefinitely.
Yeah, it seems so weird to decide that when they don't have a lot of like original content up right now.
But I also got the impression at the end of Endgame, you see him kind of training his daughter on the bow. And if you follow the comic books, the Hawkeye mantle, because I think he went over and he became Ronin for a while. But there's another character, Kate Bishop, who takes the name of Hawkeye. And I got the impression that series was going to be based around her, not necessarily Clint Barton, Jeremy Renner. So I don't know. They threw all those titles out there early on, and everyone got excited. Maybe they just sat back and said, you know what, it's too much too soon. It doesn't mean that maybe
it's because of the accusations.
I'm going to say I don't think I did. Yeah, I didn't dig deep enough in the abuse files.
I guess I have to go look this up after the show's over.
I guess,
Right.
yeah. Well, I'm sorry that's our first news item off the docket there, but
Yeah, I think they may be getting cagey around the news stories that have been circulating around Jeremy Renner.
Okay. Well, hopefully they're not true, but
which he has denied.
We can stay in the Disney universe a little bit, which is Disney has officially decided to remove the Fox name from the 20th Century title.
Why?
Yeah. So you're not going to get that 20th Century Fox logo up front. But doesn't that make more sense to keep Fox and get rid of 20th Century? It's a little antiquated. It's a little antiquated at this point.
Well, nobody likes Fox News, right?
Well, I don't see. I never made that comparison. I never sat down and said, "Oh, 20th Century Fox."
I think that might be though why they didn't just decide to go with Fox.
Movies. Right? Well, yeah.
They might decide it's associated with the news channel, but 20th Century Pictures is
dated.
it's the 21st century,
right?
Guys.
Correct. Yeah.
If you're going to change anything,
yeah. So I thought that was a little weird, but and again, so what if we get a new Star Wars movie, or they go back and reissue these, they're gonna somehow
magically touch up the logo. Yeah.
Get rid of Fox. Did you guys see the Morbius trailer? Jared Leto?
Definitely not. I'm still closing my eyes when I'm sitting in.
Did you even know that? Did you even know that they were making one?
I saw it on Facebook, but I didn't watch it.
With Jared Leto. So we can't even talk about the little cameo they show up. I didn't realize that it was going to tie into the Spider-Man universe.
If they didn't tie in Morbius with the Spider-Man universe, I would just be beside myself, because they've already done that with Venom. How can you have Venom without Spider-Man? Just the fact that they did it, but just the fact that they did is extremely offensive to me.
Right. So I guess I just thought that somehow this was a standalone, but no, we see the Vulture, Michael Keaton at the end. So we got a Batman and Joker sighting in the same. Obviously, he played Joker in Suicide Squad. I don't know. I'm still out on this one. It looks I've never been crazy about that character, so I don't know what they're gonna do with it. But anyways, and then we're just gonna go into Star Wars, because we can't go 1 week without talking Star Wars. Which is this was the big news that Christina dropped on us the other day, which is that our friend Taika Waititi is in talks to develop a Star Wars movie, TV show. Who knows? It doesn't matter.
And he
put his fingers into that universe.
He responded to this on Twitter by posting the cover of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors.
Interesting.
So not confirmed.
Well played.
But we'll see what happens. I think he would make a Star Wars movie unlike anything anybody's seen. But the problem is
that good or bad?
Well, the problem is Phil Lord and Chris Miller were apparently making a Star Wars movie unlike anyone had ever seen for Solo, and Lucasfilm wasn't too happy about it. So I don't know, like Taika Waititi is the kind of director who just needs to be given the freedom to do his own thing. So if
we've seen it happen way too many times where they bring in these directors who have these unique visions, put them on these properties, and then
they yank them.
And then they're like,
Edgar Wright.
Whoa,
Edgar Wright for Ant-Man.
Yes, first and foremost, the one I'm thinking of.
Now, and it does seem to me that Taika Waititi kind of snuck his way through with Ragnarok, but look how great that turned out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now there are certain people who absolutely hate that movie, by the way.
And I absolutely hate them.
Yeah. And to that I say, well played to you, Jim. But again, we've had this discussion before. You can't have that. If that was the first Thor movie out of the gate, people would have been up in arms. But after the first two, where he's treated with this regal respect, I guess, and then you kind of take him down that road.
Right. But Ant-Man, come on. Ant-Man is not to be taken seriously.
And it's not even
first movie, second movie, 10th movie.
Still a damn.
And Edgar Wright, I think, would have been I think it could have been. It's a good movie. Mostly for me because of Michael Pena. It could have been amazing, Yeah,
we don't know. We don't know how much ended up was his and how much was not. So, anyways, exciting news. And if half of the universe cares as much as we do, then hopefully it'll come to fruition, and maybe we'll get something fun and different and unique.
Imagine if they do fake documentary style, like you did on What We Did in the Shadows with the vampires.
I saw, though, somebody said on Twitter, I think at this point the Star Wars franchise needs Taika Waititi more than Taika Waititi needs the Star Wars franchise.
Absolutely.
So,
I think the world needs Taika Waititi more than Taika Waititi needs the world.
So it's just a little side note. You talked about Edgar Wright and Taika Waititi's. That made me think of this. I saw a little interview with Roman Griffin Davis and Archie Yates from Jojo Rabbit. You know, the two kids, Jojo and Yorkie.
You mean the German quote unquote Harry Potter?
Yes. And they're so adorable together. And that kid, Archie, he's like, the way he is in the movie is like the way he is in real life.
Oh, really?
Basically. Yeah. And I was like, these two are like a tiny Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Like,
oh, jeez, that's great.
You could put them in any like Edgar Wright movie, and they would just perfect.
Be right home.
Yeah, they're perfect together.
Huh. Very cool. So that's pretty much our news for now. So what are we reviewing today? 1917.
Yes. So yeah, like I said, Golden Globe winner. It does have a couple of known faces here, but the two main actors are relative newcomers to mainstream audiences,
which I thought was great.
Yeah,
that we're not tied up in big names, because they're on screen every second.
Yeah, right. So it's George Mackay, who plays Schofield, and Dean Charles Chapman, who plays Blake. It was interesting because I saw an interview with Sam Mendes, the director, and he said that he cast George Mackay because he had a slightly old-fashioned quality, and he seemed very internal. Like he seemed like he had an internal life that could be conveyed on screen, and that is really important for that character.
It is, because you really don't know anything about these characters, and but there you are, thrust, and you're step by step with them the entire time. But the kid who played Blake, Dean Charles Chapman, he was Tormund on Game of Thrones.
Yes, I saw something to that. I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but I'm aware that he was on that show.
We'll get
his brother was Robb Stark.
From Game of Thrones. Yes.
Before we get into the actual plot of the movie, George Mackay, throughout the entire movie, I was like, who is this guy? Where have I seen him before? It was bothering me throughout the movie. I couldn't think of it.
I
went back and Googled him. And Captain Fantastic. He's the oldest son of Viggo Mortensen and Captain Fantastic. And he is so unique looking.
He is. Well, that's what Christina was just saying.
Him. And it's been I don't know how long it's been since I've seen Captain Fantastic, but he sticks in my mind from that movie. And he had long hair, and he was trying to struggle with living that mountain life away from society and escaping his father's clutches, for lack of a better term. And so he is one of the standout roles in Captain Fantastic, and that's why he was so memorable. And he is great in 1917.
Yeah, because like you said, there's so much going on behind what you're seeing, in this. Yeah, all right, let's go.
So this is a mission movie. First and foremost, on the front lines, on the Western Front, World War I, these two soldiers are given a mission by Colin Firth, who is General Aaron Moore. Now, the Germans have apparently retreated, and the assumption is the English have them on the run. They've retreated back further into a new line that they've dug in the sand, and the English are advancing upon them, thinking that they have the upper hand now. But what they don't know, and what Colin Firth's character knows because of aerial reconnaissance, is that the Germans are 3 miles deep, and they're waiting for the English to attack so they can ambush them. So it is a trap, but their phone lines have been cut, so there's no way for them to stop the advance of English soldiers and certain death. So these two, Schofield and Blake, have to make it in less than a day to these advancing English troops and call off the attack before 1,600 English soldiers are killed.
Right.
That is the basic setup of the movie, and it's told in real time for the most part.
There are cheats, but it is, and part of the reason why Blake was chosen was because his brother is part of that battalion.
Yes.
So he has a vested interest in getting there to saving not only 1,600 lives, but more importantly, his brothers.
And, it should be noted right up front that this story is based on a story that the director Sam Mendes was told by his grandfather.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much of the story made it into the movie, but the basic mission is from Sam Mendes's grandfather, and he dedicates the movie at the end in the credits to his grandfather.
So what he said was, his grandfather, Alfred Mendez, was a messenger on the front lines. So because the telephone lines were so easily cut, or it was so easy for the enemy to intercept them because all they had to do was like hook into the line to hear the message. They used messengers a lot, and that was what his grandfather did. He was a messenger, like doing short runs. So he said it sort of went from that seed of, the messenger that needs to actually physically run the message, to the next part of the line. So, I mean, as far as historical accuracy, not so much.
Well, maybe not the plot, but
the plot.
The setting and everything.
Right, the setting and all the uniforms, everything, all that stuff was, they clearly did their homework. But like, if people are thinking this is any way based on a real incident, it's not.
No.
Yeah,
But it captures. I did read a few reviews from veterans who were almost experiencing PSD from it, and it's just. PTSD. There you go. I got my letters all mixed up there. Dyslexia kicking in, and that it is about as close as you're going to get. I mean, I obviously this takes place 100+ years ago, but it is overwhelming and exhausting because you feel like you are every step with these guys sludging through the mud, crawling over dead bodies. It's a spectacle. It is it's
especially all those scenes in the beginning and then at the end again where you're following them through the trench. The camera is behind them, in front of them.
The camera never stops moving.
No.
Yeah, the camera absolutely never stops moving. There's one scene that I think brings the whole thing to a screeching halt, and I get why. We'll get into it later. But the production value is staggering. You just can't. I mean, the landscape alone is its own character. I mean, you literally have thousands of people invested in this movie, and yet it's such an intimate just portrayal of just these two guys trying to get through and make it from point A to point B to fulfill their mission. It's amazing. It really is amazing.
So I'm sure you guys know this or heard about this, but there's not supposed to be any visible cuts in the film. It's supposed to look like it's supposed to look like one long take.
Continuous shot, and there's easily 12-15 minute shots. Which you just think about the production nightmare that impose it, because you do have other characters interacting, especially when they're running through the trenches. And it's all it's one seamless shot. But there are some cutaways when they go into dark tunnels and all of a sudden.
But as you said, the camera never stops moving. So you think about these massive set pieces that had to be built to accommodate this is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I know. And I don't even want to call them set pieces because it's just an environment. It's just they're outdoors, but it is so, especially when they hit no man's land and there's just miles of barbed wire. And you're seeing dead horses, you're seeing soldiers, there are rats everywhere, crows. It really is the art direction on this and the cinematography. Roger Deakins, who's the cinematographer on this, kudos. If you don't walk away with any kind of Academy Award for this, I can't say enough. It's overwhelming. It really is.
You were talking about the way they shot from behind the soldiers. It's particularly in the first part of the film, like when they're first in the trenches and then when they go out over no man's land, a lot of times it's shot from behind and like slightly to the side, so you almost feel like you're a third soldier.
You feel like you're with them the whole time. And you're right, the camera will there's one scene where there's like a mortar hole, and they're walking and it's full of mud and water, and they circle around it, but the camera decides to just skim across the water as they're walking. But there's maybe 2 shots where these guys are out of frame. That is it. They are front and center the entire movie. So you are there with them. The mud and it really is visceral. It's a lot to take in.
And talking about the realism of the actual environment, and of course this no man's land is in northern France, and whenever you see photos, you see this depicted in a movie, it is just like a wasteland, and that's what it is here with barbed wire, mud, dead bodies. But what they actually do is at the beginning of the movie, you see these two relaxing against a tree, against the backdrop of France, in a field, grass, what images you don't normally tie with World War I. But then it brings you to the trench. It just shows you how much that environment changes and how much the devastation of war destroyed that environment, that little bit of land in between the two fronts. And the fact that nobody knows if it's true, if the Germans have in fact retreated. They're just going on the word of this of Aaronmore, of Colin Firth. So they have to take their lives into their hands just by peeking their heads up over the front line. Hoping they won't get shot. And then, of course, they find out that it's true, that there are no Germans over on the other side of no man's land.
But only by trudging over there.
Only by getting there,
It really brings home the idea that trench warfare is just barbaric. It is crazy. It is how the guys who actually fought these wars like this. And you just see them. You just see all these guys are kind of hidden in the trenches, and they're sleeping, they're smoking cigarettes, and just kind of despondent. Yeah, it's unsettling. It really is.
So, for the production, they dug over a mile of trenches. They had to obviously actually build the trench.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying as far as the art direction goes. I mean, it's crazy.
But they dug them in the Salisbury Plain, which is near Stonehenge.
Oh, really?
And so they had to have special permission to dig because there was the potential that they might unearth some ancient Britain.
Oh, wow. Druid burial ground.
Or some ancient alien dead bodies. That would be awesome.
That'd be cool. They just throw one in the trench as an alien just to see.
As soon as they find one, we need to get Leonard Nimoy here. Stat. Dig him up. We need to do In Search Of right now. Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, jeez. The rats were all CG.
Talking about alien landscape, when they actually make it to the German line and they find it deserted, it's like undiscovered country in terms of the English soldiers. It's like they're looking around fascinated how the Germans have their layout set up. And then they remark when they see the tunnels, they built all this? They dug this out, and that's where the Germans are sleeping, underground. And talk about those rats that come into it now. Giant rats they encounter that the Germans have been living with on their side of the trench. They've got food. The soldiers left everything behind. They left in a hurry. There's still embers glowing from the fires. So they work out that the Germans were here not that long ago and just retreated. So they're going into their barracks. They're looking where they slept, and they've got food hanging from the rafters in this underground barracks. And they keep their food in bags so the rats don't get them. But the rats are hanging off these bags anyway.
I was going to say that works for bear in the woods, but a rat is just going to go anywhere. So yeah.
Of course, that part really squicked me because I live in Chicago, and we have our rats like RUSs here. So I don't need to see rats in movies. I see them every day.
Oh man. And that was our first really big jump scare because the damn rat.
The damn rat let off the tripwire.
Tripwire. And you think the rat would have happened earlier, but no, it waits until they're inside and blows up, and poor Schofield is
the Germans have laid a trap for the English soldiers. They're assuming that they're going to, once they figure out that they've retreated, that they're going to investigate.
Sure.
And so they've left the tripwire across the exit tunnel leading out of their barracks. And our two soldiers see it just in time for one of the rats to trip it. And then there's an explosion, and as Jeff said, I jumped out of my seat
because it's a very quiet. It's a war movie, but this whole opening is very quiet. Until you get to that scene, and then all of a sudden, and my theater, the sound was deafening.
So the screen blacks out, and this is obviously one of the cuts that they take advantage of this moment, and they use it to make one of the cuts. But you think for a second that Schofield is dead because he's buried in the rocks. I'm like, okay, now Blake is left to carry on, but no, he grabs his partner, pulls him out of the rock, pulls him to his feet, and they carry on out, and they make their way outside.
And that's harrowing too, because again, that's they're in the dark. Now they did have these little iPhone flashlights that I guess I didn't know were issued 100 years ago or whatever. He looked like an iPhone, right, with a little flashlight on it. It was like a flask. So Schofield's blind; he can't see. And the camera is following these guys. The fish is falling down. The whole thing is ready to collapse. The walls are crumbling, the ceiling, and they can't figure out how to get out. and they're going from one tunnel to the next, and all of a sudden there's a big chasm, and we're gonna have to jump over this thing. And the camera never loses them in that scene. So again, the orchestration and the prep work that goes into making that happen in one fluid shot is mind-boggling. I mean, I would love to watch a 5-hour making of documentary on this movie, because how many times could you really pull that off?
They said they did 6 months of rehearsals.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like in the tunnels where, especially in the trenches where you got all the soldiers, and there's a scene later on where again, I don't want to get ahead, but it's just the pre-planning that goes into making this movie look effortless.
It must be like doing a live performance, a stage performance, because there you don't get a second take. And I'm sure if you
got
screw
pyrotechnics going off, you don't
want to be the guy screwing up this 15-minute scene, right? So
right.
You want to get it right.
George Mackay said a lot of times it would be him that would mess up the scene. He'd be like 6 minutes into a 7-minute take, and like the rifle would fall off his shoulder.
That's what I'm.
and
it's
like,
stupid stuff you can't even make that up. Yeah,
you got to start all over again. But they needed to pre-plan, obviously for the technical side too, not just the actors. Because
that's what I'm saying. There's so much involved.
Pace out like, how long will the scene be when they're talking, and like the camera movement, because they wanted it to be the continuous take, and so they're literally like pacing out every single step ahead of time. And then because it was outside and they were in natural light, they needed to have cloud cover in order to shoot the film, because sunlight's too bright, and direct sunlight's too bright. And of course they're thinking, well, England in the spring, it'll be fine, right?
Overcast,
But it wasn't. Of course, the first day of filming, it was like a bright sunny day, and they're like watching the sky with this anxiety, waiting
for a cloud to come over.
Waiting for a cloud to cover.
Here he comes.
Right. And then as soon as it would come in, everybody would be like, go, 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 trying to get the shot in before.
But that's also continuity, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to think that this is all, made to look like one continuous day. So, right, your lighting can't change. You're none of that.
They make it out of the barracks, and they're in the French countryside again. So now you're seeing grass, you're not seeing the mud and the devastation, but they come upon a deserted farm, which looks like it's been ransacked by the German soldiers inside and
you get that
out.
They get that nice little story about Blake's family, because he recognizes that they're cherry blossom trees.
Yeah.
And the Germans are going out of their way to chop them down. And he, now you start to get a little bit of these characters, because Blake, that he's going to save his brother. Schofield, he's like, why did you choose me to do this? Like, you could have picked anybody. Why me?
And he's like, I didn't know that we were going to do this.
Right, correct. I thought maybe we'd go and get some food or something. Who knows? You need to tell me we're going to go on a dangerous one-way mission. So, when they get to that farm,
we're leading up into the most devastating scene of the movie.
Did not see this coming.
No. So they witness a dogfight between 2 English planes and a German plane.
I think it was Snoopy and the Red Baron.
It was absolutely the Red Baron, especially when you see the pilot of what he's dressed as.
Yeah. Well, that's what they wore, right?
That is, I guess,
Dick Dastardly. He was like straight up Dick Dastardly with the fur collar and whatnot.
So they witness this dogfight, and it's it's against the horizon, so it's not even right above them. But the English plane shoot down the German plane, and it crashes. It's coming right at them, right at the barn that they're standing in.
And again,
plane's on fire in the barn.
One clean shot.
It's one clean shot. The plane goes down behind the hill, then it comes back up again, and then it's coming right at him.
Right at him on fire.
And it's framed by the barn door.
The barn, absolutely.
Door, so it's like, it's really beautiful, because he just uses all the stuff in the environment. Roger Deakins uses
and
all
it's a still frame too.
Yeah.
The camera never moves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in that regard. And there's a couple of scenes in this movie that were great that are ruined by the trailer.
Do you think that was one of them?
Yeah, I thought it was. Well, you knew. I knew it was going to come back over the horizon. You saw in the trailer that it crashes. Oh. That's why Jim doesn't watch trailers.
That's why I don't watch trailers. So the plane crashes. They both pull the pilot out, and Blake tells Schofield to go get some water for him. So he runs over to the well, gets some water, runs back, and he sees what's already happened. The German pilot, who can't even walk because his legs are on fire, has stabbed. He's taken a knife out somewhere from his black Dick Dastardly costume.
You actually see the knife.
Oh, when they're dragging him.
It's on his hip.
Oh,
you actually see it, before. I noticed that it was there.
You're like, this is not going to end well.
and I thought they should take his knife.
Oh, he did, right to the gut. I got it.
So you don't want to believe that he's been fatally stabbed at first because you think we're just getting into this. This movie's only been on for like 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah, and he's the driving force. He's the
45 minutes. I looked at my watch.
Oh, you looked at
I was like, I was like, wait a second. Like, how long has this movie been? So
who got top billing?
Yeah, no, it's a shocker because you think they're gonna do it together.
And then it's a slow, like, he's bleeding out, but you're like, someone's gonna come. Someone's gonna come. And nobody comes.
So he dies right there. Right at that French farmhouse.
And like literally as soon as he dies, the cavalry arrives.
Yeah, not that they would have been able to save him anyway.
No, I know, but at least.
But who is it? It's Mark Strong.
Mark Strong
shows up.
Yeah.
That convoy's kind of weird, though. I'm not 100% sure why they're in the movie.
Just to get him from point A to point B, I guess. I don't know.
It kind of makes their mission, for me, it just kind of made their mission seem less urgent.
Because you're right.
You could have just thrown them on the truck.
How do they know that the Germans have retreated? If they know,
right?
Because they're on the German side of the line, and supposedly nobody else knows that.
It took me out because I was like, wait a second, like either you're alone behind enemy lines or you're not.
You're not.
There's no two ways about it here. And a convoy that big. They could have easily just thrown these two guys on a truck and
drove them all the way there, right?
Yeah. Correct. And even when they get to the bridge that's out, like the convoy drops him off and he's like 20 steps into the river and he's getting shot at. Why wouldn't they just shoot at the convoy? Because the convoy's still there.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. There are a couple of things like that make this less than a perfect movie for me.
Right.
But yeah, the convoy is strange. I don't know.
Maybe he just needed some other voices at that point, I mean, he's in shock. He's in shock from poor Blake.
It does show the soldiers kind of pulling together because there's these characters that you don't know. He musters them to get the truck out of the mud.
Right. He's like, I gotta go, dude. I gotta go. Yeah. Why not standing around here?
And then as soon as they find out what he's doing, they're like all on board with him. And they're supporting.
Well, we can't really help you, but good luck with that, son.
Yeah.
We'll give you an attaboy. Send you on your way. Did you notice that? So when the convoy comes up, there's a tree. Obviously, the Germans are just chopping down trees left and right to block. And you got 20 soldiers there moving the tree. And then when they're all back in the truck and they're driving away, the tree's gone. Because the guy says, "Is that a dead dog?" And they show you out the back of the truck, but there's no tree there. And I'm just like, did I miss something?
So the convoy can't get across this bridge that they were going to, and they're going to go 6 miles out of their way to cross this river,
right?
Because the bridge is out, and he doesn't have time. Schofield doesn't have time.
Right. They're now in Acoust, which is the sort of the town that they were using as a landmark to get to. Like once you get to Acoust, then like you go straight. Whatever was south or whatever, from there.
Take a left turn at the rock that looks like a bear.
Right.
They were able to get themselves there. I would have been. I'm pretty good with
directions.
And
Blake was the map master, right? So he was counting on Blake to get them there
out the map. It's all covered in his blood, and he just kind of throws it away.
Yeah. But he crosses, like as Jeff said, there's a German sniper in wait on the other side of this river. Schofield has to climb his way over this sunken bridge. And as he's doing so, he's getting shot at. It's just one soldier that's in a tower. He works out where he's being shot at from, and then he goes into the tower, and there's a confrontation. He's already shot the soldier from the ground. He's going up there to see if he's actually killed him or not, and then the guy's shot waiting there for him to come through the door. And they end up shooting each other, and this is where the movie blacks out for what you assume is a couple of hours.
And that blackout, that screen stayed black for 35 seconds.
Yeah.
And you're just like you're looking around like, is it coming back? Is that the end of the movie?
Yeah, no, it would have been great if they actually really wanted to go in real time. It would have been black for 2 hours. And
we didn't cut once. Yeah, but I got the impression because when he wakes up, obviously he smashed the back of his head, but he didn't get shot.
Yeah, it was weird.
Wasn't he bleeding out the back of his head?
He was bleeding
out the back of his head because he probably smashed his head on the back of the steps when he fell.
I think that his helmet protected him from the shot.
Maybe. I was waiting to see that little metal box that he had in his chest pocket somehow deflected the bullet or saved him.
Mm-hmm.
But he stumbles awake. It's now pitch black out. The city's in flames, and you're like, dude, you gotta go. But
this is where you have like some of the most gorgeously shot scenes of the film, though, with they have the flares going overhead and the way the shadows are moving.
Yeah, but you're right. You got that beautiful blue glow, highlight coming off with that red amber fire,
and it's highlighting the cross, the crucifix in the courtyard of this church, and it's just and the flare just keeps going and lighting it, and then the light dims and it lights again, and it's a beautiful blue, crisp white blue light.
Yeah, it is very impressive.
And they did some really cool tricks to make because you want to kind of direct the flare, to where the actor is, so it looks the way you want it to look. Yeah. So they sort of like did these rigs with winches, almost like a ski lift, on these industrial cherry pickers. So then they could sort of like guide the flare down and up. So they could. Because
at first you didn't know where that light was coming from, and you see the flares reflected in the pools, the water pools on the ground.
I would have loved to have seen Jack Skellington singing "What Have I Done." So then he has to make his way through the ruins of this town, this city, and there's German soldiers that are like randomly stationed around here and some of them give chase. So he's running and he goes through this one window and he loses the soldier that's chasing him, and this is where he comes upon the French woman who has found a baby, and she's kind of hiding out in this basement of this bombed out building. He convinces her that he is a friend, and he stays there.
Brings us to a screeching halt, this whole scene. And this is probably one of the few times where the camera does stop. And the whole time I'm like, dude, you got to go. You got to go. It is now pitch black out.
Yeah, but he's got a moral choice here because he's found this girl and his infant, and he's got to leave them. So it's, as an audience, you're like, what is he going to,
Right.
But he's got a mission.
And he unloads everything. He goes, here, take all my food. And she's like, no, baby can't eat that. And that's where the milk comes in.
That's where
the farm, he finds the milk, which obviously didn't turn, or I guess it was good enough for him.
It's in the canteen, right?
Fresh in the bucket. When that cow leave it. So anyways, yes, I this was the point where it was a little frustrating for me. And I get it, because especially at the end, you realize that he did have a family. Because you don't really know anything about this character whatsoever.
But then he goes again because he's got the mission, and he chokes out that one German soldier as the drunken one is kind of making his way through that room towards him. And you're like, kill him. And then...
I mean, it's shot in profile, so some of the impact is dissipated, so you're not like right in there with him choking the soldier. But I was so struck by the fact that the soldier looked so young, and Schofield looked so young. And it just makes you feel like the intense pointlessness of war. Yeah,
absolutely.
The river sequence after he jumps into the river and the current carries him. Of course there's a waterfall. How could there not be a waterfall when he falls down? But he makes it to the bank, and he's not too much the worse for wear. He's just wet, and now he's clean again. Because we didn't mention that scene where he impales his hand on the barbed wire and then puts it through a dead body.
that was bad. That's funny because my son's friend saw it, and that was his one takeaway. He's like, dude, he put his hand in a guy's body
with his
I said, that's gonna be an infested wound. It's gonna be infected, dude. You gotta get that looked at.
Actually, as soon as that happened, I thought he's got tetanus.
Yeah, right.
He's dead.
Yeah, well, just the barbed wire alone was enough.
Or at least he's going to get his arm amputated at some point.
Rust it. And that, when he makes it to the final front line in that wounded tent, that was some rough stuff. Yeah.
So he's on his way, actually, after he goes down the waterfall. And
now we're like daybreak. The birds are chirping.
Yeah. And he had to get to where he was going by dawn to stop this. And he thinks that he's late. He thinks that he's blown the mission. He comes upon a bank, and he's walking through the forest. And he comes upon what turns out to be the 2nd Battalion, which is what
and that's a beautiful reveal because you hear the song, you hear the guy singing, and you don't see the soldiers. And as and again, you're with him every step of the way, and then it's like they magically start appearing, and you just start realizing that all these little brown balls that you're seeing in front of you are soldiers hunkered down, listening to this guy sing. I thought that was, and that's where the camera, where he comes into the edge of the group, and he just slumps down on a tree, and the camera swings around him, goes all the way through the troops to the guy singing, and then weeds its way back at eye level, all these guys on the ground, back to him at the tree. And that's all one shot.
He's walking up initially, the camera's behind him.
Yes, yeah.
So that you're following the song.
Right.
You feel like the song is pulling him to a place. Yeah. And so it's like actually, so that you're feeling what he's feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the song being sung is Wayfaring Stranger, which is an old traditional song about a soldier or a man who's about to die and crossing the River Jordan and talking about seeing his dead mother and his dead father. So it's very apropos. This soldier is singing it to his comrades in the 2nd Battalion. They all get up and move towards the front line as soon as the song is over. And this is when Schofield realizes that he is with the 2nd Battalion now, and that this is where he needs to be. And they've already started the attack.
Yeah, they're the second wave.
The first wave is already gone, and he's got to make it to the Colonel Mackenzie, to call it off before anybody else runs out there. And there's another scene, so we're back in the new trench now. Although this one it's almost blinding, the white gravel and sand that this trench is made up of. But he's got to make it to Mackenzie, and there's just too many soldiers that he can't make it in time before the second wave goes out. So he actually has to get out of the trench and run across the battlefield.
And that's a scene that's ruined in the trailer, because it's a moment where he realizes this is the only way he's going to succeed in his mission, is to come out of that trench and run across the battlefield. And it's a very intense, and again, the orchestration and the timing on that is just absolutely beautiful, because you got these soldiers pouring out, running toward the front line. They're, guns are ablaze, there's bombs going off, and he's just weaving his way. He's running into guys falling over, they're falling over, and he just gets back up and he keeps running. Yep. And I thought that it's beautifully shot. But again,
and he makes it. Of course, he makes it to Mackenzie now, and he strong arms his way into the little dugout where Mackenzie and his men are. Played by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
So Mark Strong had given him a bit of advice earlier in the movie, that when he delivers his message, to make sure that there's witnesses, because some of these generals, colonels, captains are a little bit battle happy.
Yeah.
Yes. So he may just ignore these orders just to continue the battle. And it seems that that's what's actually going to happen. Because Mackenzie is convinced that they've got the Germans on the run.
Yeah, we got them on the run, baby.
Why would I pull back now?
Yep.
And then when he actually thinks about it,
read the letter, dude. Just read the letter.
And then he calls it off. And so mission accomplished.
And that scene where he's running out of the trenches, they shot that with 450 extras and 50 stunt doubles that were basically there to make sure the extras did not run into the explosives that they had set up, in various places. So, like, we're going to talk about, like, the need for technical coordination when you're, trying to do one long shot. Right. And apparently the actors bumping into George Mackay as he's running was an accident. But
really? Well, it's a happy accident.
It looks realistic.
It would have looked a little too fake for him to be able to dodge every one of those guys because they're coming out and they're not expecting this dude. He's like a streaker at a football game. He's like, what are you doing out here? He's like, what the?
But he said, unless they tell you to stop, you keep moving through the scene. So he said, I just kept running, and they ended up using that take.
Wow. Yeah.
The attack is called off, and he eventually meets Blake's brother, who we mentioned is Robb Stark from Game of Thrones. He processes the grief, and again, it's all one scene, so the camera stays on him as he's being told that his brother is dead.
He's like, "Oh, my brother."
Like, where is he? I was to come here with your brother, and he thinks that he's just following behind him, but then he has to tell him that his brother died, and then says, "May I write to your mother to tell him how he died?" And he said, "Of course."
Well, that's a nice thing, because I brought up before the cherry blossoms, and when Schofield is coming out of the waterfall, and he's defeated. He thinks he's late, and he's got to clamber over all these dead bodies that are just bloated and collecting at the bottom of this river. When he comes to, he sees all the cherry blossoms floating on the water. And that, to me, gives him renewed purpose to at least do this for Blake. that Blake gave his life for this mission, and he was going to fulfill it one way or the other.
And the scene when he tells Blake's brother, that was when Blake's death really hit me. I think that I was shocked but not sad when it first happened, because there's still this sense of urgency.
Right, he's got to move on.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of pushing you through the movie. But like at that point where you get to sort of pause and see his brother's grief,
reaction,
and then I was crying. Then I was like, you know.
And see, maybe that's why, you know, the whole that convoy, you know, it diverts your attention away from the fact that this guy just died, and you're right back in. Yeah, it's like delayed.
It sort of keeps pushing forward so quickly that you don't have a chance to sort of sit in it and like, you know, feel the grief. And then, but that, like at that moment, and again, they choose to have the camera behind Schofield.
Behind him. Yeah.
So you're with him delivering the news. Like that's, you know, that's one of the things about the way they shot this movie. It's like it's participatory almost for the audience.
Right. Yeah. And the scene actually when Schofield hooks up with this convoy and he gives that last look back at the farmhouse, like this is Blake's resting place. So they allow Schofield one last rumination on it, and one last rumination before he turns around and he's concentrating on the soldiers that are in the truck with him. Speaking of Schofield, we get the reveal when he looks at the picture of his own family that he takes out.
That he did have a wife and he did have 2 daughters.
Which gives a little bit more credence to that scene with the woman and the baby.
Right. That's why I said that. And that kind of makes sense then.
And then it's really nice because he starts the movie with leaning against a tree in a field of flowers, and he finishes the movie leaning against a tree in a field of flowers. You know, so it like circles around again.
He's made it through the horror and he's back to at least a temporarily peaceful place. So it was exhausting, and you could tell that that's what they were going for, and they certainly achieved it with this movie. Best Picture winner, as I mentioned before, at the Golden Globes for Best Drama. And I think that was not only just the plot, but for the technical achievement of what Sam Mendes did.
I think that's really what it's about, you know, because I think it's a very good movie. But I have to say that I'm glad I had a week to think about it before we talked about it. I do. Because it's the kind of thing where it has such an emotional impact up front.
Yeah.
That you walk out of the theater and you're so blown away. And it's only when you have a little time to think about it where you're like, you know, it's a really good movie, but it's not like, not the greatest movie I saw last year, you know, or whatever.
No. So, but the technical achievement alone is pretty impressive.
It is. And it's interesting too, because the long takes, I don't know if you guys ever saw Rope by Alfred Hitchcock.
Hitchcock,
Right. So he did the same thing with it was supposed to look like a continuous take, and you know, he would like cut, like he would move the camera like to an inanimate object and like cut the film and then cut back. And I actually was thinking about that because the length of the takes is approximately the same, you know, like 8 to 10 minutes long. It's an amazing achievement artistically.
Yes.
I think the story has some holes, and it's like kind of the more you look at the narrative, you're like, this could have been a little tighter, but they do such a good job of feeding you that immediacy that you walk out of the film and you're just emotionally caught up in it.
And the 2 actors are so good and
they are.
Absolutely.
And I think that the problem with this film being seen primarily as a technical achievement is that it takes away from the performance of the actors. Like, the actors haven't been nominated for any awards, but they should have been.
They should have been, yes. And that was, reading some reviews, that was the complaint that most reviewers had, that they were so busy marveling and thinking about the technical achievement that it took them out of the movie. I was worried about that going in, actually.
Right.
Like, am I going to be able to pay attention to the movie as a movie?
I said I wanted to see it. Once I learned that was how they were going to film this, I said straight up, I'm going to see this whether we talk about it or not. This is definitely a movie I want to see.
But I was with those characters. You know, I didn't let it.
You were completely invested. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't let it distract me or take away from anything that was going on with the characters. And did you catch the Easter eggs? When he was running across the battlefield, I saw Lola from Lola Run running there as well with her little helmet.
Maybe you saw Jar Jar Binks.
And then Sandra Bullock was driving one of the army trucks too.
Nice.
She's going pretty fast. I don't think she was slowing down.
She got to keep that thing at 55.
Yeah, she does. She does.
Yeah. If only there was a bus back then, it would have been a lot easier.
It's too bad our podcast listeners can't hear my eye roll.
Yeah, we should make a sound effect for that, like maybe a creaking door or something. Hey, there's going to be dad jokes. Dad jokes aplenty. So, okay, how many buckets would we give 1917?
I think like 3 3/4.
3 3/4?
Like, yeah, like somebody took a scoop of popcorn off the top there.
That's in the range that I'm looking at. I think I would go 4.
I would go 4, I think. And again, like you said, Jim, you are taken aback a bit by the technical achievement of it all. And I guess you can walk in and not even real, like my wife could watch this movie and I could be going, that was all one take. And she's like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. So you can go in and just enjoy this movie. I say enjoy. It's not an uplifting movie.
You can experience the movie. You can experience
it. Yeah. And it is exhilarating. It is like I said, I used the word visceral before, but just, the technical achievement does stand above the story.
Yeah, and I think because I'm a story person, and like I said, because I watched it like a week ago.
I was gonna say I just saw it yesterday. So,
so
it's still
like maybe a week from now, you might be kind of. Sometimes when you let a film sink in, but I would not take anything away from them. I think they've obviously done something really beautiful and unique.
Yeah, it is a lovely homage to that generation for sure.
Mm-hmm. And we'll be keeping our eyes on it come Oscar night to see if it wins. So,
well, I mean, it's like a film that's tailor-made for the Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
It's about an important topic.
Yeah, and the filmmakers know what they're doing. Obviously, when they release it limited in December, just so it can make it in for Oscar consideration.
Yep.
And I think there's always a reluctance to vote against well-done war films, to be honest with you. Again, not taking anything away from the film, but whether it's deserving or not of Best Picture, I think that there's just a reluctance to say, oh, well, this is a film, that's clearly like an homage to the soldiers' experience, and it's a beautiful technical achievement. I think Smart Money would be on 1917, although my heart is obviously with Parasite.
Which we'll get into more detail about next week. But yeah, and if you think about, I don't know what the ratio is of older males on the Academy, but you would think that if there are still a lot, that they're going to err towards this rather than anything else.
I think the list of nominees will tell you that there are still a lot of older
but you would think
males.
After the last couple of years that they were getting better at that, but it seems to be back to their old ways.
The list of nominees from this year is really skewed toward a certain demographic.
It definitely is. Maybe we should do an Oscar episode before the awards come out, just so we can discuss this at more length. But today we want to concentrate on our second feature, which is Pan's Labyrinth. But before we do, let's head to the concession stand, give ourselves a break and a treat, and then we'll be right back.
No, that's not big enough. No, that's not big enough either. That's more like it. We're delighted to have you with us, and we extend a cordial welcome to you. We've lined up the top stars from Hollywood and from all over the world to entertain you on our giant screen with the new, colorful motion pictures you've been hearing about and reading about. To add to your enjoyment, we're all wound up to bowl you over at intermission time with live wire service at our snack bar, where you'll find a tempting variety of favorite foods and beverages. Your continued patronage is very, very welcome.
Okay, we're back, and we are here to talk about Pan's Labyrinth.
Now,
what kind of connection do you guys have with this film?
Do you guys inadvertently stumbled upon one of my 5 buckets?
This is a movie I probably could watch every
So we are
day.
turning this into a 5-bucket episode.
I will back that up because I absolutely love this movie. I dragged my buddy. We talked about the Jacob Burns Film Center when I saw Jojo Rabbit, and this is one of those movies I dragged my buddy to go see and completely neglected to tell him that it was subtitled until we were sitting in the theater. He's like, I don't like to read.
Now, did you do this on purpose?
Yeah, I probably, just omitted that information. If he wasn't smart enough to do his research, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, the actual title is Labyrinth of the Fawn, correct?
Yes. Yes. Pan's Labyrinth was just the English translation.
Studio, yeah.
And nothing to do with Pan.
No. And Guillermo del Toro has actually said that it's not Pan in the film, that Pan is too dangerous a character from Myth to include in this movie. So I saw this film at Landmark Century Theater, which I talked about last week. Yes. I've seen like a lot of, sort of like art house type movies. That's where you would go to see them. And I remember seeing it in the theater and feeling, between the darkness of the theater and the kind of lighting that he uses in the film, feeling sort of very almost claustrophobic. It's a very tense feeling that you have throughout, because obviously the real scenes are sort of full of one kind of terror, and the fantasy scenes are full of a different kind of terror. But I love Guillermo del Toro's work because, and I think this is something I really realized yesterday, that I connect with him a lot because he tells stories very much in the way that I like to tell stories in my books. He sort of believes in the fairy tale structure, this idea that things just happen. There's not necessarily an explanation for everything that happens. There's not necessarily a justification for why things happen. They just happen in fairy tales. And he likes to leave viewers, I think, with a certain degree of uncertainty. And I like to do that in my books too. Like, I feel like I really connect with him and the way that he tells stories.
Listen, if you're going to connect with somebody, there's no better than Del Toro. Mm-hmm. He definitely has a unique vision.
Watching some of the bonus features on the disc that I had out from the library, he treats his characters in this movie the same way, that they're all direct and they're all types of a certain kind. Like the bad guy is evil. He didn't want to try to make him sympathetic in any way or give him a reason to do what he's doing. He's the evil character. These are archetypes. These are like very much fairy tale type characters.
Like what attracts him to horror is not that what makes it work commercially, but what attracts it to him is its kinship with fairy tales. And I think you really feel that obviously more in this movie almost than any of his other films.
It starts right from the get-go, that voiceover that gives you the story of Princess Moana. And it's set up that it's all based on this tale of Princess Moana living underground. And this gave me one of the couple of correlations I caught between this and Jim Henson's Labyrinth. Mm-hmm. Just mentioning the underground, thinking of David Bowie's song that opens the movie Labyrinth. I couldn't help but think of that. But Princess Moana is underground and lives with her father, the king, and the queen. But she is curious about the outside world. And she goes out there to live among the humans, and is blinded by the sun and is overtaken by the outside world and dies. And her father is grieving, but eventually he holds out hope that she will be reincarnated as a human and will make her way back to the kingdom. And that is the opening fairy tale as the voiceover gives us at the beginning of the movie. And then we're introduced to Ophelia, and the story is off and running. So this movie takes place in Spain in 1944. So here is the correlation between this and 1917. We tried to come up with another war movie. And I think this kind of, while 1917 obviously is based in reality, and this one is only partially based in reality, using it as a backdrop, I think the overall flavor of the two movies were very similar to me. Yeah. So I think that they fit very nicely together. Yeah. World War I, World War II, two different time periods, but still. So we're in Spain, 1944, 5 years after the Spanish Civil War. So there's a fascist government. There's a battalion of these guys that are in this farmhouse set by the mountains, which are filled with guerrilla freedom fighters. Mm-hmm. And there's a constant battle between the fascist army and the guerrillas. And this is the backdrop that we're set in. Captain Vidal, who is the leader of this faction, is bringing his wife, Carmen, to the farmhouse because she's about to have his child. Carmen has a daughter from a previous marriage, and her name is Ophelia.
Yes.
And she is the one that is so already steeped in fairy tale. She's bringing her books with her to read, and she is very reluctant, reticent to be living with this Captain Vidal because her father has died, and it's set up that he is a tailor, or he was a tailor in Spain, and that her mother is remarried now to this Captain Vidal.
And I think that it's interesting, her mother's giving her this lecture in the car saying, please call him father. It's only a word. And Ophelia doesn't respond, but you can sense her reluctance to call him father because she doesn't, not just that he's not her real father, but that she doesn't like him. Obviously they've met before, and it's not the first time that she's meeting him.
Yeah, because she's like, why'd you have to get married again? She's like, well, I was lonely, but I'm here with you. She goes, you got me. She's like, when you get older, you'll understand. But yeah, she's very defiant, this little girl.
And she has the sense that children do have in fairy tales, that they immediately recognize evil, like with no, kind of restraints on it.
Yeah.
And that he's a bad guy as soon as Carmen gets out of the car and he puts his hand on her stomach so possessively.
Yeah. Right. But even that opening shot where they're in the car, Ophelia and her mother, and they stop because the mother's having issues. And you've got all the pollen and stuff floating around. So you really, right off the bat, have this very ethereal fairy tale element. And then she encounters that little bug, which becomes like her Jiminy Cricket.
Now, she's got a stronger will than I do, because if I saw that bug, I would scream and run the other way.
Would you have
expecting that thing to launch itself and attach it to my face? But no, she recognizes it as what it actually is, a fairy.
And she reacts to the fairy, and actually to pretty much everything else in the film, with this really sort of beautiful matter-of-factness. Again, it's sort of very
just
typical of children in fairy tales. Of course there's a witch. Of course there's a faun. Of course there's a fairy, because the world has magic, and there's no kind of sense of
wonder.
Well, she's right. She wonder, but she's not awed by it. I think she's aware that it's
matter of fact.
I think she's aware that it's wonderful, and when I say wonderful, I mean not in the sense of that it's great, but in sort of the more old-fashioned way that it's astonishing. Something that's full of wonder.
Right.
I feel like a lot of times she's just sort of momentarily startled, and then she's fascinated rather than frightened. And of course her mother has to die, because mothers always die in fairy tales. Mothers are not allowed to live.
That's pretty harsh.
No, it's true though.
Well,
there are only stepmothers.
No, that's true.
In fairy tales, there are no mothers. I don't know. Probably some guy.
Some guy. Those damn Brothers Grimm.
I'm talking obviously about primarily European-based fairy tales, which is clearly Del Toro's influence for this, because he's using European fairy tale characters and tropes, like the fauns, the fairies. Right. Yep. Those are all come from a European root.
So with the character Mercedes, then we set it up that there's freedom fighters in the mountains, and that Mercedes, who is the head of the household here, who is the main housekeeper, she's been taking stuff from the storeroom. And the doctor, who's also attending there, and he's waiting there because the captain has brought the doctor here to take care of his wife as she's going to have the baby. The doctor is also sympathetic to the freedom fighters.
Right.
So all this is going on under the captain's nose. And speaking of noses, there's a very upsetting scene.
Oof. Oh,
front,
that is.
Where the captain's soldiers find a father and son who have a weapon on them that's recently been fired. So the captain comes outside to question them, and the son is insistent because his father is older, and he's answering the questions for his father. That the reason that the gun is warm and that it's just been fired is that they were out looking for rabbits, and the captain is convinced that these two guys are part of the freedom, in which they may very well be. But the captain takes umbrage to the son's tone and smashes his face in with a blunt end of a bottle. And it's this scene, I remember seeing this in the theater.
Brutal.
The audience kind of sat up and took notice.
Yeah, because you immediately realize who the monster in this movie is.
Right.
It's not the big creatures that she encounters.
It's
this guy.
captain. Del Toro, in the bonus features, again says that this guy is steeped in evil. So he is the bad guy from every fairy tale. So much so, you expect a booing and hissing sound coming out as soon as this guy comes on camera, and then every time he does... He's only missing that mustache to twirl whenever he comes on screen, and he is terrible. Yeah. Now, apparently, this actor who plays Captain Vidal is a comedian in Spain, and a lot of people did not think that he could pull it off. And actually, a few of the producers told Del Toro, "Don't cast him. I don't think that he'll pull off this role." And I think somehow comedians, like whenever you saw Robin Williams go out of his comfort zone in that 1 hour photo, I think that there's like a certain
heart of darkness,
a heart of darkness in every comedian.
It is. And then he blames the soldiers for that he was forced to kill these guys because they do realize that, in the bottom of the bag are 2 rabbits. So maybe they were telling the truth.
Callously gives the rabbits to Mercedes and says, cook these.
Here, cook these.
Yeah. And she's sitting there and she probably knows these two, because she's from the area, even if they're not freedom fighters.
Right.
And she's devastated of what she's just seen, just like the audience is. This completely sets up that Ophelia is not safe with Captain Vidal. Neither is her mother or the unborn baby at this point. But then we get into the fantasy aspects of the movie, where Ophelia's already seen this fairy. And then a little bit later, the bug comes to her in her sleep. And again, seeing a bug like this crawl over your bed covers, approaching your face, I think I would have a heart attack right there. But nope, the bug is trying to get her attention, pull her out of the house, and it actually becomes a fairy. It changes form.
Yes. And she shows it a picture of a fairy in a book. Are you a fairy? And then it transforms into one.
So it leads her to the labyrinth. She goes down underground. There's a spiral staircase of these ruins that are on the premises of this farmhouse. And she encounters the faun, who kind of comes out of the earth.
It's such a beautiful design. This, Doug Jones, who does the acting work for pretty much all of Del Toro's monster movies. It's just such beautifully realized makeup and prosthetics. It is unlike anything you've probably ever seen on film before.
Is he exclusively in Del Toro's movies as characters like?
He is kind of like his muse, like he does. Like he's Abe Sapien, at least in the first one.
Abe Sapien. And then he was in the
Shape of Water.
The Shape of Water.
Yep. Yeah. He did play both. He played the Pale Man, and he played Fawn in this. I'm trying to think what else.
They met on the set of Mimic.
Okay, there you go.
Now, is this a practical effect?
It is.
It is straight up practical.
So he is on stilts walking with those fawn legs.
The fawn legs, they CG'd out. His legs are behind the fawn legs.
They're in front of the fawn leg, and the fawn legs are behind, and he's on like almost like a little platform.
Okay, and they CG'd the legs out.
Right, and they CG'd his from his knee down to his ankle, basically out of the shots. Right. But what is amazing about this is one of those things that frustrates me. I feel like this kind of performance is not recognized as a performance. People just see it as an effect, but he's performing a character.
Yeah, and he had to learn Spanish.
Which he didn't know before this movie.
He was the only actor on set who did not know Spanish, and he not only had to learn his lines, but he had to learn the girls' lines as well. So he knew because I guess the mechanics inside the prosthetic head were blinking the eyes or whatever were so loud that he had a really hard time hearing her. So he had to know what the dialogue, when his his moment was up or whatever. So yeah, you're right though. I mean, until Andy Serkis with Gollum. These kind of performances are just behind the scenes and not really talked about.
He talked about, there's an interview with him on the Criterion edition. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. The faun actually ages backwards in the film. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So like at the beginning, the faun has like white hair and he looks a little more kind of decrepit. And then by the end of the film, he's like standing up straighter. He has more energy. His hair's like turned auburn. And
I didn't pick up on that at all.
It's pretty subtle, but he talked about with his performance how he was very aware at the beginning that he was an old faun.
Okay.
And that he was trying to correspond his movements to the way an older faun might move. And then later to change like his posture a little bit and to adjust things slowly because he was aging backwards, and that it was really difficult because obviously the film's not shot in sequence.
Right.
So
wow.
he
I
had
did not
to
pick up on
like
that at all.
different things to do throughout the movie and trying to think like, where am I sort of in the life cycle of this fawn? You know, so he's putting a lot into this performance.
And he's threatening as well. It's, you know, he tells Ophelia that he is not there to hurt her, that he's a friend, but his appearance and his delivery of the lines is a little threatening. So you don't know whether you should trust this fawn or not. And Ophelia is told at one point in the movie, never trust a fawn.
Right.
So you're already questioning
at
that point.
She does a couple
he
questionable things anyways. He was told a couple things not to do that she does, as I guess kids do.
But the fawn recognizes her as Princess Moana. So in order for her to gain entry back to her underground kingdom, he gives her, or tells her he's going to give her 3 tasks to perform, which he gives her one at a time. And he also gives her a book. The pages write themselves as to what these tasks mean.
Beautifully write themselves at that.
So the first task that she has is to take a key from a toad that has set himself up under what used to be a beautiful tree and is now living in the roots of the tree.
Easy enough.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah, sure. I'll do it.
The day that this is going to happen, that she is going to go and try to get this key from the toad, her mother and the captain are hosting a bunch of well-to-do families, government sympathizers. The mother and the staff have gotten this beautiful dress ready for Ophelia. She dresses up, and then she goes outside to find this key. And of course, there's mud everywhere. She takes the dress off, thinking that she's doing herself a favor by putting it over a branch before she goes inside the tree to look for the toad, but it doesn't work out that way. But before we get there, she encounters the toad, which is a grotesque but beautiful.
He's massive.
He's massive. Hissing cockroach-type beetles that are crawling all over her. They're all over the place under the tree, and it turns out that the toad is eating them, and he actually grabs a couple right off of her skin and her face with his giant tongue.
Jabba the Hutt tongue.
But she's been given 4 stones to feed to this toad in order to get the key, and the stones reveal themselves as these beetles. So of course the toad wants them. He's like a dog. He's licking his chops as soon as he sees what she's got in her hand. He eats these stones, he eats these bugs, and just vomits the insides of himself.
Like just immediately turns inside out. That was pretty grisly.
It was. This yellow gelatinous blob comes out of his mouth, and there's still beetles crawling around in it.
It's lovely.
And that's where she sees the key stuck there, and she grabs the key and makes her way out of the tree.
I think it's such a great scene though, because she's scared when she's first going into the tunnel. You know, like she looks a little frightened. She's like breathing a little harder, and then when she sees the toad, she's completely calm. It's like, now I've seen what I have to face. Now I know what it is, and she's not frightened anymore. You know, again, this sort of like matter-of-factness she has when faced with sort of like these fantastic or frightening things. And I also like, actually, when she comes down dressed in her party dress, Del Toro does a little, she's wearing like, you know, a green velvet dress with a white pinafore, and she's got a bow in her hair, and she looks very much like Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, she does. Absolutely. And then the visual of her crawling into the trunk of the tree.
Right. She's going into a portal, right? Just like Alice. So I think that was deliberate, you know, where he's just sort of doing this little visual callback, you know, to these kind of portal fantasy stories.
The dress has blown off the branch that she's left it on, and it's completely covered in mud. She puts it back on and makes her way back home, and she doesn't make it to the dinner because she's covered in mud. Her mother tells her how disappointed she is,
and how disappointed the captain is. And she takes great glee in knowing that she has disappointed the captain. So, because like you said, every time she says, you know, father, she goes, "Oh, you mean the captain? Yeah, he's not my father." No. You know, she does make a point numerous times to say he's not my father. Which
Mercedes is on board with as well, because she has no love for the captain.
Mercedes, I actually put a note that says Mercedes rules.
And right about here is where we get to the second task that the fawn actually visits her in her bedroom at this point.
Right, because she's banished to the attic, right? Because her mother, but again though, right? Like very fairy tale, like she's sent to a corner of the household where nobody will see her, and she won't bother, you know, she won't bother anybody because her mother is having such a hard pregnancy. and the doctor says she shouldn't stay in the room with her mother anymore. But yeah, it gives the fawn an opportunity now to like invade her personal space.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, listen, I bought some chalk. I opened the door. Here I am.
So yeah, that's how the fawn actually sets up this second task, gives her a piece of chalk in order to get to where she needs to be, this otherworldly dimension, let's call it. Now, is it this point that he also gives her the mandrake root for her mother?
He says you haven't completed the second task.
Oh, so that was
he expected
afterwards.
He expected her to do it, and she says, "I didn't. My mother was sick." Yep. And then he gives her the mandrake.
So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves then. The second task features the Pale Man, which is a very iconic visual in terms of this movie. What she needs to do is get a dagger off of this Pale Man, and the fawn tells her that when she is in his presence, that he's got a table set of all the delicacies that she might imagine, but to not eat or drink anything.
How'd that work out?
It's like basic fairy tale rules.
Yeah.
You
don't
never
Again,
eat or drink anything. But even in like a fairy tale, like in a lot of British fairy tales or Irish fairy tales, if you ate something from the fairy world, you would be trapped in the fairy world. You could not leave. So like, again, he's just sort of calling back to like these fairy tale tropes and conventions that we know. And to me, when she goes into that room where the Pale Man is sitting so still and all the food is on the table, the food looks to me deeply unappetizing because it all looks like blood.
But she did go to bed with no dinner, so at some point she's like...
And she's looking at all the
there's
pictures,
paintings,
the paintings.
Depictions of
the Pale Man killing children and eating children.
Yeah.
So
and there's a pile of shoes in the corner to show all the kids that he's eaten. This is all that's left of them. Yeah. I mean, I would be like, get that dagger and get out of there, no matter how hungry I am.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you pick up on so she's got the key now and she needs to unlock one of the 3 boxes. There's a theme of 3 going on throughout this movie with the 3 windows over the bathtub and obviously this creature is just absolutely horrific. I don't know if he has any genesis in an established fairy tale monster, but he's horrific to look at with the eyeballs inside his hands that he holds up to his head in order to be able to see. So you would think the minute he goes to grab you, he loses sight of you.
Yeah.
But by that time, it's too late, right?
I guess so. And again, when he finally does come to life, because like any stupid child does, she eats a grape, and the fairies are like, dude, what are you doing? They're like trying to pull it out of her hand. And of course, he wakes up and he's lumbering toward her, and he's just got these little pencil-thin, wobbly legs holding this big... he's got flabby skin. He's almost like a skeleton with oversized skin. The elbows are flapping and the big belly. And again, he's got this weird alien head with no eyes because they're inside his palms. And it's just a thing of nightmares. Really.
They said during the design process, the creature designers said that Guillermo del Toro said to them he wanted it to be like a person who's lost weight very quickly. And so that's why he has sort of like that saggy skin.
Yeah. Right. Because that's what happened to him on the set of this movie.
Yeah, he said he lost 45 pounds or something like that?
Yeah.
So there's different interpretations out there that I was seeing that, that may represent Guillermo himself, not to say that he's an eater of children. But, physically he may have taken that away from what was happening to his own body, or it may be the fawn in another form. That's there and this is also because of the similarity being played by the same person. It kind of eats or leads into your distrust of the fawn, that he would have even sent her there
to
this task
creature. Yeah.
But she gets the dagger. She does complete the task, and just by the skin of her teeth gets away from the Pale Man by drawing a door in the ceiling and pulling herself out. And you can hear the Pale Man trying to still get to her, even though the floor is sealed and she's back in the attic.
Yeah.
But 2 of the fairies have died.
Yes.
They've been captured by the Pale Man, and he's
ripped their heads off.
Right off.
It's
I heard
horrible.
That's the best part. Yeah.
They look like, almost like birds that have had their heads bitten off, and he's like pouring the blood into his mouth. It's, again, it's sort of like this. All the real scenes are lit in sort of like cool colors, so like grays and blues.
Are beautiful. Yep.
And then like the transition scenes when she's like in the labyrinth are greenish. And then when she's in the fairy world, it's all like golds and reds.
Yeah.
So it's true, like in the scene with the Pale Man, or like the scene at the
Very
end,
much so
at
in
the
the
end
Pale
of the
Man.
film. The reds in the Pale Man scene really stand out to me. Like I said, even just the food on the table, just look, to me, it does not look like food you would want to eat. There's all these like bright reds.
Well, just seeing that guy sitting at the end of the table, I'd be like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
He made this food. Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly.
So. Yep.
Yeah. If there's some fried chicken there, maybe. I'm willing to die for some fried chicken. But.
It's interesting too, because she actually approaches him. She kind of like, it's like, is he awake?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even walk near him.
No, correct. Right.
But the fawn is extremely upset that she did not follow his orders, and he denies her access to the underground at this point. You can't be the princess if you didn't listen to what I said. Now the deal's off. But he takes the dagger anyway. So,
right.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that, by the way.
So, and then this is where the part with the mandrake root comes up. And this is this is one of the most bizarre visuals, I think, of the movie, that he tells her to put this root under the bed where her mother is sleeping in a pan of fresh milk and feed it 2 drops of blood a day. Mm-hmm. And as soon as she gets this root in the milk, it unfurls, and it's like a little, like a baby Groot almost sitting in the milk.
It's making noise. You think someone would have heard it.
But almost immediately, the mother gets better. Up to this point, is this real or is this not real? Is this happening in Ophelia's head?
Yeah.
Or is there reality to what she's seeing with the fawn? And there's actually a root. There is something physical that she puts under the bed.
Yeah.
And whenever she interacts with it, it's a living thing. But a little bit later on, she's caught under the bed, and the captain pulls it out, and there it is, and it's in the form that it unfurled in. So that's one of the clues that I think Del Toro his intent is that this is reality. It's not just her imagination.
So, but what about the scene at the end though, where she's confronted with the fawn, and the captain comes around the corner, and he sees her standing there, and there's no fawn.
But I still buy that. I still buy that, even though she is the only one that sees it, I don't think that takes away from its reality.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he's too mundane to see.
Yeah, well, I mean,
magical.
It's established, that children are, they've got that age of innocence where, you're more susceptible to be able to see a ghost or to believe in something that, like you said, even Mercedes, because she asked her at one point early on, do you believe in fairies? And she's like, at one point, yeah, but then I see the horrors of the world and kind of goes bye-bye.
Yeah. And speaking of that, the movie kind of takes over into the reality of the movie.
Well, this is exactly where the fantasy goes away, and this is just straight up, all too real human drama.
Because then we see the captain and his men and the freedom fighters in the mountains having a number of different skirmishes. And another horrific scene where they actually capture one of the freedom fighters, and there's a torture. Again, you didn't really need any more credence to the fact that the captain is the most evil person on the face of the earth, but they give you some anyway in this torture scene. It's terrible.
I mean, he doesn't actually show you torturing him. He shows you the tools he's going to use, and then he shows you the outcome, which is enough.
Yes,
you don't need to see anything else.
And the doctor comes in, and I think that the captain just wants this guy to remain alive because he's about to get more information.
Oh, absolutely.
He's already admitted that he's a freedom fighter, and he's told him some things about the men in the woods.
You've got a stoolie inside your own establishment here.
And the doctor kills him as a mercy killing to put the guy out of his misery. And as soon as he does that, he reveals himself as sympathetic to the freedom fighters. Yeah. He's fighting with Mercedes from the inside, and he's taking his life into his hands, every day with doing this. And he's shot in the back by the captain as he walks away.
And I thought it's an interesting, because when he gets shot in the back, he stops. Mm-hmm. And then he takes his glasses off like he's going to start cleaning them, and it reminded me so much. I mean, I hate to kind of make this comparison, but like when Spock dies in Star Trek 2, and he stands up and he's all irradiated, and he takes the time to straighten out his uniform. So it says a lot about the character. Mm-hmm. But he takes his glasses off because he knows that jig is up, and then he just drops. Yeah, he was a great character.
And then right after this, right before this happens, is when the Mandrake is discovered, and Carmen throws the Mandrake in the fire, right? So this is like a literal burning of the magical world in the film, the literal destruction of magic, which is why the reality portion, I think, takes over at this point in the story. And then, so you have all these things in rapid succession. You have the freedom fighter who's tortured, the doctor dies, and now Carmen is giving birth. Yeah. And they like, she started, she's
just when he needed the doctor the most,
just when he needed the doctor, he just shot him in the back.
Son of a...
But again, as soon as that mandrake root is thrown in the fire, the mother feels the effects of it. So it just lends that
credence,
itself lends the reality of the magical world, that it had an effect on the real world in the movie, a direct effect.
And this is such a hard scene because Ophelia is alone in the hallway, and like all these adults are sort of rushing around, and the captain's there waiting. And she's thinking about her mother, and he's thinking about his son.
Right.
And the medic comes out and says, your wife has died. And he goes into the room, and that he doesn't care that she died.
No.
But Ophelia does. And he's left her alone there. Like, if you didn't need any more convincing that this guy was a bad guy.
Right.
He can't even put a hand on her shoulder because her mom just died. All he cares about is his son.
This is where we get to the discovery of Mercedes. He figures out that she is the mole by asking her to retrieve something out of the storeroom while he's the only one that has the key. And she gets up without asking him for the key. So that kind of clues
because they were raided, because the guerrilla, the rebels actually drew their attention away.
Yeah.
By sabotaging a train.
That they didn't break in to the
that was stupid on their part.
That
right?
They left the lock on.
Just bash it once or twice to make it look like it was broken into.
So Mercedes has now really exposed herself, and now he gives her the same spiel because he's got her tied up now that he gave to the freedom fighter. So she's set up. But now this is one of the big question marks as to how that knife that she's concealed stays in her
rolled up
she rolls
in
it in there.
But how can you roll it and make it stay? Well, maybe it's
she's made like a little pocket in there, but it's nice because he establishes that a couple of times.
Yes, correct.
Cutting things, and
so she's got that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a catharsis for the audience.
Yes, he gets his comeuppance. Yes,
but stabs him in the shoulder twice, like stab him in the eye, stab him in the heart, and then she does give him that like wide Joker smile, which is
oh man, that is just
that scene is like absolutely like body horror.
It is.
Like when she cuts his face open. And then later when he's sewing it up.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And then he
That's
drinks,
even
then
worse.
He's drinking alcohol. And every time he does, it kills him to drink
squirts
it.
out the side, Well, you gotta disinfect that.
But yeah, she's such a
badass.
You just get so excited when you see her, take him down, and then she like sort of casually walks out of the...
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like now she's just kind of like head down walking away. She just sliced this guy's mouth wide open and put 2 bleeds in him.
Right. Now, before this happens, they were about to escape. Her and Ophelia were about to escape until they're caught, and then Ophelia's locked in her room again, but she's got the chalk, so she's got a means to get out.
Yeah.
So she takes her brother. So we're getting into the end game of the movie now. She takes her brother.
And the fawn comes back. I'll give you one more chance.
Yep. Gives her
but you have to do this exactly as I tell you, right? And at this point, he seems like a compassionate character because she runs into his arms, and she sees him as a savior at this point.
She's got no right. Yeah.
She's not frightened of him. And he says, "Go and get your brother and bring him to me."
And this is another callback, I think, to Labyrinth itself because Jennifer Connelly and her little baby brother. But she has the baby in her arms. She goes into the labyrinth and faces the fawn again.
Not before she poisons the captain's glass of scotch.
Now, was that poison? Was it?
It was whatever weed killer.
I think it's laudanum because that was very common use for painkiller at the time. And the doctor had, prescribed it, so to speak, to her mother and said you can put a little in to help you sleep, and that was what laudanum was used for, to help you rest, basically, which is it's opium.
Yeah. Well, that captain's world went to it went to a heartbeat, man.
But he still had enough of wits about him to follow, Ophelia into the labyrinth. Yep. So as the faun is there trying to convince her to hand over the baby, because he's got the dagger in his hand, it's like, oh, I'm just going to give a little pinprick. That's all.
Right, correct. We just need the blood of an innocent.
Just need the blood of an innocent. And she's like, then it comes back, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't be trusting this guy. Yeah. And as an audience member, you're like, no, because now the faun is at his most sinister, I think, in the whole movie, when he's trying to convince her to hand over the baby, and she won't do it. And then the captain comes upon them. And then you see from his point of view, she's talking to nothing.
Nobody, yeah.
And this is another kind of moment of disbelief, kind of like in 1917 when Blake gets stabbed. You don't want to believe it. The captain shoots Ophelia in the stomach. And she falls over, and she's on the precipice of the downward spiral. So her blood is dripping down into...
But again, he informs us in the very first scene of this movie. She's laying on the ground with blood pouring out of her mouth and her nose, but it's going backwards. So what's going to happen to this character from the minute you see her. You don't know how, but you do know that this is not going to end well.
But it does at the same time.
Exactly.
Mercedes has been looking for her because the freedom fighters have now overtaken the soldiers. So they're taking control of the farmhouse, and the captain comes stumbling out of the labyrinth with the baby in his hands that he's taken off of Ophelia. And a little bit earlier on, because there's a theme with the captain and his watch.
But the watch has significance to him because he's messing with it the entire movie.
He's like, give this watch to my son so he knows. And
this is the best line of the entire movie, which he says, your son will never know your name.
They finally they shoot him in the head rather than...
Right in the cheek.
Yep.
It's like not even in the center. Yeah. Oof.
So we get one last boo and hiss at the captain before he falls down dead. And then they run into the labyrinth, and you're hoping that they might save Ophelia, but no, she is dead. But then we get the reveal of the end.
The scene where, she goes into the fairy world, and her father is there and her mother is there and the faun is there. And they're like, hey, that last task was that you weren't supposed to give your brother away and you passed. And so now you get to be a princess again and live in this world. This ending for this film is really controversial, because a lot of people do not like uncertainty in their endings. And Guillermo del Toro said, the one question he's asked more than any other is like, did she actually die? Or did she go to the fantasy world? And he said the answer reveals more about you than it does about me. And I love those kinds of endings. I love that degree
where you're kind of left to just be like, all right, I gotta have to just figure out my own.
I've written endings like this to my books, and I get the same kind of angry questions from my readers.
Does it give you glee? Does it feel like, I don't know,
I don't think there is. To me, there was no question. Her human self had to die to return, because she is dead, but she's not at the same time. And that's just something you have to accept. It's not a black or white answer.
See, now for me, it's the same thing, because I like the idea that there is a magic and that she, would return to where she belongs and that she does get a happy ending. But if you're the kind of person who can't believe that, then this is a bleak ending.
A downer.
To a film. Guillermo said in an interview, the beauty of science is that it gives you answers, and the beauty of art is that it gives you questions.
Ooh.
And I think that is really profound.
I can see him saying that with his accent as well. And it sounds 100 times better with the accent than without.
You pretentious.
Now, I want to know, my big question is, was that the personification of the king, was that her father? Since the queen was her mother.
I think
you would have to assume so. I mean, we never saw her dad. We never saw a picture of him or anything.
The Werewolf of London had an amazing tailor, and I would like to think that was...
That was... Oh, boy. Yeah,
so a beautiful, beautiful movie.
It really is.
I mean, we should talk about that beautiful, really delicate score by Javier Navarrete. Really sort of minimal. It keeps reusing the lullaby theme in a really kind of delicate way throughout the film. It really enhances, I think, your experience of the film.
I like the fact that, like most fairy tales, there is a very, very dark undercurrent here. So the beauty is tempered by the darkness. It's horrible and wonderful at the same time.
But the horror, the darkness all comes from the human side.
Oh, definitely. Well, the fawn is a little bit decrepit
and
creepy too.
The pale man eats
the pale man.
Okay.
The pale man is, but he didn't. He ate a couple fairies. What a beautiful. I mean, it won 3 Academy Awards: cinematography, art direction, makeup.
And should have won more because.
Yes. Yeah.
Was Guillermo nominated for Best Director?
I don't know.
I don't know that either.
We'll have to look that up.
Do you know the studio did offer to double the budget if he would film it in English, and he refused?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Right? Stand your ground, man.
Yeah.
He talks about how, I can't remember now which interview it was, I think it was Inventors in Moviegoing. He talked about how often he's actually given up his salary.
He gave up all of his salary on this and back-end money.
Yeah, he does it a lot because he just wants to make the movie.
To me, that's a true artist. That's like Bill Watterson walking away from Calvin and Hobbes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm making art for the sake of making art. I'm not here to make money. It's just my passion. I have a story to tell, you know, and unfortunately the studios just want to put a some kind of a denomination to it that it's worth X amount of dollars, or it's going to make X amount of dollars. So,
and to me, I think it's still my favorite of his movies. Definitely.
Yeah, I think I like all of his movies so much. It's hard for me to pick one. You know, I like all of his movies.
I didn't realize that he directed.
Except for Pacific Rim. I think that's the only one that's not. Me.
I'll give you the sequel, and he didn't do the sequel.
No, he did not do the sequel. I didn't realize that he directed Blade 2. We have to go back and kind of revisit
Blade
that
2
trilogy.
is a kick-ass movie, as is Hellboy 2.
Well,
I love Hellboy.
I absolutely loved Hellboy. I mean, to me, it's a love story. And again, I came home, I just gushed about this movie to my wife, and when it finally came out on disc, I picked it up and we watched it, and she's like, "What is wrong with you?"
So this is official.
Yes.
We are inducting Pan's Labyrinth into the 5 bucket lists. Fire the trumpets, the fanfare, the whole 9 yards. Pan's Labyrinth is in our 5 bucket list. So
if you've never seen this movie, I don't care. You can watch it, I guess, dubbed.
That's terrible.
It is terrible.
Why would you do that?
I don't, because there are some people.
It shouldn't even be available dubbed.
There are some people that refuse to watch a movie where they're forced to read. I have a buddy who loves Spider-Man, but refuses to see Into the Spider-Verse because he hates cartoons. That's sad.
If you're just limiting your worldview. I can understand, like with the Godzilla movies, as I remember them as a kid, they were dubbed. So I prefer the dubbed versions, but that's probably the only instance where I would watch a dubbed version over the
animated movies. I will, only because sometimes I want to get caught up in the art, and if you're forced to read, you kind of miss stuff, but this does not, by reading this, does not take anything away from me whatsoever in this movie.
No.
It is, like I said, I could watch this movie every day.
I think I told you guys like 90% of what I watch is in subtitles. So
right.
I feel like the more foreign movies you watch, the more accustomed you get to reading subtitles to where like you can start to read them, quickly, almost subliminally.
Right.
And then like your eye can still stay focused on the picture and on the visuals.
Practice, folks.
Yeah. Jim asked me for my 5 bucket list, and I was sort of composing it in my head, and I was like, these guys are going to be watching a lot of movies with subtitles.
That's all right. Bring us out of our comfort zone.
As is with the 5 bucket list, Pan's Labyrinth inducted, one thinks it's 5 bucket, we all do. So let's move on to our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
Now, Christina actually came up with this one.
I like this too.
We're looking at, now I'm going to have to go with different criteria than the both of you do, because if it's a movie that I want to see, I don't watch the trailer. I listen to the trailer.
Right.
I don't watch it. So, but the confessional question is, from the trailers that we've seen for movies that are coming up in 2020, just from the trailer alone, what are we the most excited about seeing?
Is that the criteria? Because this movie that I'm picking doesn't even have a trailer yet.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna hold you to the.
You can't participate this week.
Well, what we're excited about, that's maybe I should rephrase it. What we're excited about coming up.
I get the feeling that maybe Jim and I have the same answer, but we'll find out.
Is that like Bennifer, Gemini? Like, you know?
Gemini. You're Gemini, man. Gemini.
Okay, so who wants to go first?
Christina's.
Yeah, so I actually have two based trailers, but also one of them because I really wanted to see anyway. The first one is Antebellum. I don't know if you guys saw the
Yes
the trailer for this. I don't even know what it's about, and I want to see this movie.
But that's
yeah.
But that's the fun stuff of a trailer like that, which is
you're
not giving me the entire plot. That's the one thing that we've complained about numerous times, which is the trailers give away way too much. And this, you're like, what the hell am I watching?
Like, I don't even know what this movie is about, but it's got something to do with a woman in a contemporary period who is somehow
connecting
to something that happened in the antebellum period. The two directors actually directed music videos, so I don't know.
So hey, so did David Fincher, right? That's where he started too.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Ridley Scott.
You know how the script will be. They also wrote the script together, but visually, just from the trailer, every time I see it, I'm like, I can't wait to see this movie. I have no idea what it's about, but I want to see it. Yeah.
And they do promote the fact that it's from the producers of Us and Get Out.
Right. It was a couple of the producers, not Jordan Peele.
Right.
It's,
A
couple of the other
Otherwise,
producers.
you would have seen Peele's name front and center if that was the case. But
and then the other movie that I'm really, really looking forward to is Wonder Woman 84.
I am on the fence with that.
Nope.
Really?
I can't wait to see it.
I don't like the poster. I don't like this gold costume that and they're bringing back Steve.
Yes.
You know what?
They brought back Captain America, right? Maybe he was on ice.
When I was a little girl, Wonder Woman was my favorite. Like,
gotcha. Listen, I'm not going to take it. We almost paired 1917 up with Wonder Woman.
Because of the whole World War I.
Yeah, just the World War, and we never got a chance to talk about it. It is my favorite DC movie. I love it. It's up there as far as superhero movies.
But Wonder Woman is so much better than any other DC movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's like that's not a fair
but it's
comparison.
still a damn good movie.
But Wonder Woman is up there with the Marvel movies for me.
Yes, absolutely. I just don't know about anchoring it in 1984. Is it going to be like a Stranger Things where you just, look, there's Chess King in the mall, and like, are you going to get bogged down in? I don't know. I'll see it.
Yeah. That's actually my answer too. Is with the Wonder Woman 84.
Is it
really?
Because I actually watched that one, and I laughed. I thought the jokes were funny. You know, the fish out of water aspect. And all that, those slow-mo action sequences, she looks just so kick-ass in this movie.
Oh, she does. Yeah.
That is my answer.
I'm not saying I'm.
I liked the way that the Black Widow sounded. I liked the sound of that trailer.
It sounds awesome. Wow. I actually, so I'm going, my movie's not even coming out till November. So like I said, there's no trailer for it yet. But it was originally supposed to be released in March, and then they backed it up to May, and now it's November.
What is it?
But the director, Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh.
That's this year?
This year? I thought it was next year.
2020. November 2020.
Okay.
November. So it's not even a summer movie.
No, they're backing up till November. But the director, Adam Wingard, has gone on record. He was on Twitter the other day, or some account, and basically said that that's worked to the benefit of this movie. And it's his Instagram page, because you know what he used as a graphic? And I actually said that they should do this, is the picture of Kong floating on the balloons from the old King Kong versus Godzilla.
Which is an iconic
and
image.
I said, when you promote this movie, that's what you need to do, is just create a bunch of drones flying around Kong, floating on balloons around Manhattan. Don't tell anybody what it is. Just fly
they could do it at the next Macy's Day Parade if it's in November,
awesome,
right?
Right. So, anyways, and then on Facebook, someone immediately said, "Why are they still making movies like this? The last one bombed, didn't it?" And I had to stick my 2 cents and tell them that as a child of the 70s and 80s, I love Godzilla, and that last movie, to me, matter of fact, it was on HBO last night.
I haven't watched it again, but I loved it. I know Christina.
I DVR'd it, so
now Christina loves Godzilla too. That's the thing, but
do.
she did not like Godzilla King of the Monsters.
You did not like King of the Monsters?
No, and I don't know if either of you guys saw Shin Godzilla.
Yes.
Yeah, I have.
So I was so enamored of Shin Godzilla, which I just thought was incredible. And it seemed like they were going to make a sequel, and then they, sort of signed over the rights to Legendary for a few years, so that they could make these films that were, associated with the new King Kong movie.
Right.
And I liked the new King Kong movie a lot. I thought that was great. So I think I had very high expectations, but for me, it just fell way short of the Kong movie and way short of Shin Godzilla. I just could not. I wanted to love it.
Bummer. Yeah, we gushed over it.
Yeah,
but I didn't love it, and I was.
That's a bummer.
I went home and I watched Shin Godzilla again.
Did you? Jim, I will share this though, which is we're going to Hawaii this year.
Yes.
And you can do a tour of the Kong Skull Island set. There's all the Triceratops skulls and stuff are still there. And I said, that's on my list. We're going.
All right. You got to take pictures and post.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Speaking of subtitles, as a preview for next week's episode, Jeff, I really hope that you're going to get a chance to see Parasite. You have to.
I have to. How can I
hope you can see it on the big screen if you can.
But Parasite. We're going back to our Oscar nominee list, and we're watching Parasite, which is up for Best Picture this year. And we're pairing it with The Host.
The Host.
Now, this may be another 5-bucket episode.
I wish you guys could see my face, because for me, this is like 10 buckets.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this and you do not like subtitled films normally, do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
And watch either both or one of these two movies, and you will not be disappointed. The Host, if you were a monster fan in any way, shape, or form,
absolutely.
This is just elevates that genre.
Yeah, I'll bring it up next week. My buddy Leslie loaned me this movie, and he's a huge Godzilla fan. And I had never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. And he's like, you got to watch this movie. And I didn't even know what hit me. I was just not prepared for this movie. Yeah.
And, Jeff, the less said about Parasite, the better. I'm not going to say a word. Okay. But going in, I don't know anything.
I know absolutely nothing about this movie.
I've thought about Parasite pretty much every day since I saw it.
Oh, my.
Like, I cannot
It's like a worm that gets in you.
I cannot wait for you to see this movie.
All right.
Just 1 week away. Just 1 week away now. So that's it for this show. And again, welcome Christina to the team as an official member.
New cast member. 101 episodes.
We're working on changing up our stuff. We still have the same opening, but we're hoping that's going to be different.
We're going to get that little Batwoman motorcycle.
Yeah.
Christine's in this episode.
So many weeks to look forward to with our trio at Team. So thanks for listening as always.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend, guys.
Bye.
All right, ciao.